Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. As part of a comprehensive news analysis, today we'll be discussing 6 important articles out of the Hindu newspaper, daily edition. But before we begin, as always, remember that the 5 questions or 6 questions out of this session will be ready on the Telegram channel. So do like, share and subscribe to the Telegram channel and our channel generally. With this, let's look at the 6 to 7 topics we are going to cover today. First, there is a very interesting article, 2 very contrasting articles. One talks about how America is making exceptions for India, and the third one actually talks about how there are concerns in India-US relationship. This is very interesting because we'll get 2 contrasting pictures, how there is collaboration and there's problem also. On the other hand, we'll also have the NIRF rankings, and we'll try to discuss them in the context of state-based ranking and how many colleges are in each and every state. Generally, a data which you should know. Thereafter, we'll talk about Vande Bharat trains, then GI tags, Aadhaar authentication because Aadhaar based questions are coming, and last but not the least, awards because awards have been in the news recently and generally have been asked in the UPSC examination. So good morning to all of you, and let's begin our journey for today with the first topic, which is the arc of American exceptionism for India. Now, before again, as always, I will not go into the nitty-gritty of the article. First, I'll try to give you an overview and then we'll go into the nitty-gritty. The article has 3 basic parts. It talks about how there was an era of American exceptionalism and now we are in the era of American exceptionism. There are 2 very different words. Exceptionalism means that America was not going to make an exception for anybody. It was the trendsetter, it was the goal setter, and its exceptionalism was that we are exceptional in our performance. We will not do any form of exceptions for anybody else. Now we've entered the new era of what is called American exceptionism, which is making exceptions for India. Therefore, what it talks about, it actually gives a historical arc of how the relationship has been developing. And first, it talks about how, and this is the first part of the article, it talks about how different prime ministers and different presidents of America and India have basically progressed the relationship in the right direction. For example, when we talk about the Atal Bihari Vajpayee regime along with the Bush and the Clinton regime, it was more about what is called summit-based cooperation. Summit-based cooperation meaning having mechanisms to have bilateral talks. Thereafter comes the Manmohan Singh era, and thereafter it was again Bush and Obama, which was based on the concept of nuclear cooperation. So it was about exceptionism in nuclear power. And thereafter, under Prime Minister Modi, it is under Trump and Biden, it is about trade, technology, and the most important for India, which is military assistance and cooperation. Be it INDEX or ISET, it's about technology transfer. It's about basically a relationship based on military technology, defense technology. So there is a basic ebb and flow in this relationship from Vajpayee to Manmohan Singh to Prime Minister Modi, wherein we are moving in a certain direction from summit-based to nuclear to trade and defense. This is the first thing which it talks about, which is a very simple ebb and flow in the relationship. But this relationship before 1998 was not that good because we had a lot of sanctions from America because of the nuclear test itself, and it is after 1998 that this relationship has started to change, and thereafter the relationship became more stronger and stronger and has moved in a very good direction. Now, what are the areas in which the exceptionalism has become exception? Please look at the words which I am saying. Exceptionalism, L-I-S-M, and ism, exceptionism. Exceptionism is that we are exceptional, we will not accept anybody, and exceptionism is to give somebody an exception. So the second part of the article talks about, has America actually changed its basic orientation? And that is true. It is true because it has done exceptions, a pragmatic exception, because now it understands the importance of India and is not still based in the Cold War era type understanding of being a Russia or USSR ally in that regard. So where can we see these exceptionisms? First, we were given exceptions when it comes to nuclear fuel. So the NP, though we are not part of the NPT, we have been given through the NSG and the non-NPT regime, we are getting nuclear fuel, basically weapons, not weapons grade, but enriched uranium and plutonium, which can be used both in nuclear reactors and in warheads itself. That exception was given to us during the Manmohan Singh regime throughout the 123 agreement and the different forms of what we call as concessions which were given by Obama also. So therefore the first exception was done in nuclear power, wherein though we are not part of the NPT, though we are not part of the most important suppliers group itself, we were still given access to nuclear fuel. This was the first exception which was made. Second exception talks about how we still take a lot of arms from Russia, and that brings us under the regime of what is called CATSA. CATSA sanctions, which are on Turkey, which are on different countries of Europe, wherein they're taking different forms of defense technology from Russia. They go under America's sanctions. That sanctions under defense have also been made an exception. We don't come under CATSA, and recent amendment in the Congress itself, all the different sanctions which could have been applied to India have been removed. Then it talks about how now it comes to technology. Again, technology transfer is happening, though we are not a NATO member and we have a different type of relationship with America, but an exception has also been made under CATSA. So therefore we are getting technology which was not available to us previously. Further, when we talk about oil, we are still taking Russian oil. Though when it comes to Nord Stream 2, the Germans are under sanctions of the Americans, we were not put under sanctions of the Americans because of the fact that we were made an exception when it came to we taking oil from Russia itself. So if you look at it, two are very Russia oriented, wherein we still have a very good relationship with Russia, and therefore defense, oil, all these things still are based on an exception based regime, not a sanction based regime. And nuclear power and technology has always been a problematic aspect of this relationship, but we have been able to iron that out also. Now the question is why? This is the third part of the article. First part of the article talks about the evolution. Second part of the article talks about how it has been changing, where have been exceptions been made, and third is why. Why has this exception been made? And herein comes four very important points. First is India as a country, as a democracy, as a demography. The fact of the matter is India is the largest democracy and therefore America cannot ignore it. Second is the China and Russia angle, wherein because India has a border with China itself, therefore it becomes the most reliable partner in countering China and even Russia because of its historical relationship with the USSR and Russia generally. But the most important point which has been pointed out in the article itself is the importance of what we call as the Indian diasporic population, wherein it's basically the Indians which are in the US. They have turned out to be a very important, reliable, law-abiding agent or catalyst in developing this relationship better. Therefore, the diasporic population itself has allowed the Americans to change their perception towards India. And therefore, the four basic points which come out is India's position as a democracy, India's position as countering for China and Russia, and last but not the least is the diasporic population generally being a very reliable partner for the Americans, a lot of them contributing to their different campaigns also. But the last point which is made out of these 3 points is America has this basic tendency. It's a finicky power. And we've made this point previously, I've made this point previously, that it's a finicky power. It can be very moody. It is right now we are the best friend of America, but America can change its stance also very quickly. And therefore, we also need to be cautious. This article is the optimistic article, which talks about the greatness of this relationship. On the other hand, we will see the third article, which talks about a lot of different areas of what we call as irritants, which had developed between India and America as of right now under digital trade itself. We'll talk about that. But the three basic points made in this article. First, how has the relationship evolved? Second, where have the exceptions been made? Third, why have the exceptions been made? This word of exceptionalism to exceptionism is very, very important, can be used in the examination, and it will need a specific context of this article to write that type of an answer. So I hope that you understand the basic point here. If you understand the basic point, we'll go into the nitty-gritty and add the basic details into this story. Can we do that? Yes? Great. Perfect. So, since 1998, the relationship has been changing, has been strengthening year on year with Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump and Biden. And on the Indian side, you have Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who have changed the face of this relationship very quickly and in a very systematic way. Now, if we talk about the basic gist, of this relationship, between the Clinton-Vajpayee era, it was about summit level diplomacy, which is basically creating bilateral institutions which we use today. Second is Manmohan Singh and Bush-Obama matrix, which was rather based on nuclear diplomacy. And thereafter it is Prime Minister Modi, Trump, Obama and Biden, which is based on trade and military diplomacy. So therefore you can see that the basic point is shifting. The basic agenda is shifting with every prime minister and with every president of the US. So this is the basic gist of that relationship. But let us try to map that relationship in a better way or in detail itself. So in 1998, when the sanctions were there on India for performing the nuclear test itself, there was the first waiver which came from Mr. Clinton, but it was to both India and Pakistan. And this is a major change which has happened under Obama and Trump and Biden, which is that all exceptions which were there for India were also given to Pakistan previously. Now it is not true. India is now become an exclusive partner of the US. This is called de-hyphenation. Previously, if you talked about India, you had to talk about Pakistan. India, Pakistan. Hyphen is this. So it was always about India, Pakistan. This was a hyphenated relationship, it is called. This is called a hyphen. Now, what the Americans have done is, it's called de-hyphenation. They have removed the hyphen and now they have developed an independent policy with India and Pakistan both. And therefore, since 1998, once this first waiver comes, it comes from both India and Pakistan. But thereafter, the relationship starts to change after the Kargil war itself, and there is a de-hyphenation of this relationship, and Pakistan is not given all the exceptions which India were given. So, under the Bush administration, it was actually the joint statement of 2005 which changed a lot of things. Though we were not under the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Act first exception which came, which was we were getting uranium from external sources itself. Thereafter you have the Henry Hyden Act, which is the Congress accepting the fact that India should be provided nuclear power and nuclear technology. Thereafter, its ratification in India under what is called the 1-2-3 agreement under Manmohan Singh, for which he had to also face a no confidence motion. And thereafter, the nuclear surprise group, which is the exception which came in 2008. So therefore, the first exception, you don't have to go into the details itself. The first exception was in the nuclear sphere, wherein though not a part of the NPT regime, not part of NSG initially, we were given access to nuclear technology and nuclear fuel. So the first thing which you need to remember is nuclear exception. Thereafter, the nuclear exception was totally removed by 2010 when Obama visited Delhi. He changed the whole regime itself under the US Export Administration Regulations and the International Traffic in Arms Regulation. The nuclear emphasis now started to change towards defense. So there is a major exception, a waiver which was given to India when Obama came. Thereafter, we moved away from this NPT and nuclear concept, the significance being that though India is not part of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty regime, it still had access to nuclear technology and nuclear fuel. Then once this exception happened, this exception was not given to Pakistan. Here is the de-hyphenation. So in nuclear, initially it was both to India and to Pakistan, but the dehyphenation happened under Obama, wherein India and Pakistan were removed from the same matrix itself. Independent relationship was created. So the first exception, the first waivers were in the nuclear zone. Thereafter, since then, the second exception, and this again you have to remember, is under defense technology, wherein we have been taking a lot of technology and co-developing a lot of different missiles with Russia, and therefore we do come under CATSA. What is Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanction Act, CATSA, or 2017, we come under it. And we actually, because of taking S-400 from Russia, we are eligible to be sanctioned by America. But again, America did not do it, and we were taken out of the CATSA sanction concept itself. CATSA sanction, which is as of right now applied to Turkey and China, is not applied to India. So this is second major, what we call as exception made for India. Thereafter, as of right now, Russia, Ukraine, we are still taking oil from Russia. Though the Germans are under sanctions for taking fuel from the Russians, we are again given an exception when it comes to nuclear fuel, when it comes to what we call as oil and crude oil being, or natural gas, which comes from Russia itself. So therefore, if you look at the basic relationship from nuclear to defense to oil, the aspect here is that the US has moved away from American exceptionalism, that we are exceptional, we will not do exceptions for others, to a pragmatic era of American exceptionalism for India. This is very, very important point. Please remember this basic word play, because this will help you in the examination generally. Now, the reason why, this is a very important, the third part of the article itself, why is that this relationship exists like this? The reason is very simple. First is India's position as a world power, most populous nation, biggest democracy, most vibrant democracy, unity in diversity, plural. Therefore, we also have, with all of this, a very good track record of non-proliferation, wherein when we did get technology for nuclear testing and even enriched uranium, we did not give it to anybody else. So we have a very good record of non-proliferation. We keep it to ourselves. Second is market. India is the biggest market for America as of right now, and when it comes to military spending and military market also, it is the biggest in that sense. Third, Beijing, China. Countering China, India is the best bet for America because we share a border, and as it is, we have a problematic relationship with that country. Last but not the least is the diasporic population, which has been professional, law-abiding, prosperous, unproblematic community in America itself. Therefore, it has become a very good relationship, or it has fostered the good relationship, which is called the Samosa Caucus as of right now, wherein in America itself there are a lot of their senators and their what we call members of the Senate and the members of their parliament, or the Congress rather, which are Indians, and therefore Indians have turned out to be a very reliable partner for the US, what we call as growth story, and generally they have been funding a lot of their campaigns also. So the Indian diasporic population has also been problematic. It's not like that we are involved in problematic aspects of American culture. No, we are law-abiding, prosperous professionals. Most of their companies are running on Indian professionals only. So we have to remember these 4 points in remembering why this relationship has been extremely exceptional and now has moved away from exceptionalism to exceptionism. So this is the reason. This is the most important point which you have to remember, because you would have to push it into an answer, because they will ask you, why has America changed its position? But does this mean that this story is too good to be true? Or should we trust America when it comes to this relationship generally? And the answer to this question is no. The answer to this question is no, because America has been a moody power. America is a finicky power. There is fickleness also. That it will have a very good relationship with Pakistan previously, now very good that they've abandoned it. Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, China, though all have their own problematic aspects of existence in geopolitics itself, all have argued that, for example, China-US relationships in the 1970s were very, very good. Now, America has abandoned it. The US and Pakistan relationship was very, very good before 1998. So that is why the first waiver also included Pakistan. Then, because of terrorism or the acknowledgement of terrorism, there was a movement away from that. The problem here is that India has to make sure that this is not a temporary, what you call, infatuation with India. Because America does this. It will align itself with any country it has basic interest with, and thereafter use it and throw. So America uses and throws countries quite a lot, and we have to make sure that we have a much more robust relationship which is not based on a very simple, what we call, need-based understanding. And this is a very important aspect of this diplomacy. We can get as much as we can, but the problem is these sanctions are not being applied to us right now. They can be applied to us at any point of time. So therefore, the paradoxical relationship is that a lot of countries have gone through this basic type of relationship with America. America has a track record of being moody and can change its stance very quickly. The second problem here is that it is not a give and take relationship, it's a take relationship, wherein it's unidirectional, be it technology, hardware, investment. India is getting a lot of things, but the reciprocation cannot happen when it comes to technology. Therefore, it's a one-way relationship based on American timelines. If America wants to give it, then only it gives it. It's not that we can force the issue itself. So, before we move on to the second article, let me give you an overview, a longish one but an important one with regards to this article itself. From summit to nuclear to the basic concept of defense technology, India has been put into exceptions, waivers have been given. From nuclear NPT to the concept of CATSA to the concept of oil, everywhere India has got waivers, but that is based on American need and interest with India. 4 basic causes: diasporic population, vibrant democracy, the aspect related to China, and the market for military, and generally India is a very big market. Now, should we be too happy with it? We have to be cautious. This is the basic point this article is making with 4 basic subsets. Is this clear? Is this clear? Because this is a very nuanced article that way, has a lot of layers to unpack, and I hope that you understand the layers. From an exceptionism to exceptionalism to exceptionism, the aspect of a good relationship, finicky power, moody power, one-way relationship, timing is always dictated by America, how it can change at any point of time, and previously also countries have had this basic relationship with America, and we need to learn from that also. Perfect. So we'll move to the second article. As we go on, I'll keep on revising with you so that you don't have to look at this session again, but you just revise with me in this session itself. The second is a smaller article, but more important data for you generally because education sector is important. So as you know, the NIRF, which is the National Institutional Ranking Framework, the NIRF rankings came for all of the institutions in India itself. And what is a very interesting development in that is that Tamil Nadu, in that sense, excels in most of the categories and has most of the colleges which are in the top 10. So therefore, we just need to understand this data vis-a-vis how it is divided spatially, in the sense how it is divided state-wise. So the simple aspect is, what are the 5 parameters which are looked into under NIRF? First is teaching, learning, resources. This is very important for you because this can be asked in the examination. 40% of the weightage of the ranking is given to teaching, learning and resources. That very simply, teaching, learning is happening, resources all need to be at a certain quality and a certain level, 40% for that. Thereafter, graduation outcome. Are you able to get a job? What is the basic placement? Thereafter, research and professional practices. This is the culture within the college, within the institution about research. Thereafter, outreach and inclusivity, which is the concept of what is the basic profile of the students itself and how are they reaching the students in that regard. And last but not the least is perception. What is the perception of the institution? It could be a very good institution, but the perception could be bad. And the number of colleges which have been actually trying to get integrated into the NIRF, because not all colleges in India are actually, you have to voluntarily get inducted into NIRF, or you have to say that I want to be evaluated under NIRF. Under that, initially it was 535 in 2017, then 1600 in 2020, and now close to 2,746 colleges and institutions perform in the NIRF ranking in 2023, and this is a 5-fold increase. So therefore now it has become more and more realistic and more representative. But again, still not all institutions in India take part in the NIRF rankings of the government. Now, this is what is the most important concept for you. This is what you have to learn. What is the spatial distribution of the colleges which are among the top 100? So in the top 100, Tamil Nadu has the largest share of colleges, which is 35. Delhi alone as a UT has 32. Thereafter Kerala 14, West Bengal 8. But why is this data very significant? Because if you look at the data vis-a-vis other states, this gives you a much better picture of how there are concentrated zones of education in India, wherein together these 4 states and UTs have 89% of all top colleges, and therefore UP, Bihar, MP, Rajasthan, Odisha do not have a single college in the top 100 itself. And when we look at the southern states itself, Karnataka has 2 colleges, Telangana 1, Andhra Pradesh has none, and Tamil Nadu 35% is more than double the combined score of the other southern states itself, which is 17%, and therefore what it shows is that there are hotspots. There are different hotspots which have been created. For example, New Delhi, for example, West Bengal, for example, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And this is also not good when it comes to education, because this shows that there are certain states which are performing very well, and there are certain states which are not performing very well. And this only means that either students have to travel to that state itself to basically get access to world-class institutions, or there's a problem in their basic ranking or their institutions itself, which is that they are not performing well in these basic concepts. And in this, Tamil Nadu has been shown as a case study, wherein Tamil Nadu performs very well in inclusivity because of the concept of social justice itself, and generally access to both urban and rural, because though their colleges are mostly concentrated in Chennai, Coimbatore and Tiruchirappalli districts itself, the basic profile of the different districts shows that the students are still coming from the rural sector also, and therefore the most important implication is that Tamil Nadu's performance, is it just a fluke? It's sporadic. Is it that? No. It has always been like this since 2017 till 2023. It has been performing in the top 1 or 2, and therefore the aspect here is Tamil Nadu can be seen as a very good case study. It's a big state also. It has a very diverse population also, and therefore it can be a good study for example, UP or for Bihar, for MP, to understand why is it happening. So very simply, state's performance shows 2 basic trends. This is what you learn for the examination. The first trend is that there is a concentration of colleges in certain areas, hotspots are there, and second is Tamil Nadu can be seen, should be seen as a good case study to understand why is that the case, and why is that other southern states are not performing that well, when 8% out of this 17% is obviously 14% is actually Kerala itself, and therefore it's only 3% for the other big states of South India itself. So why is that? Because it is not that all southern states are performing well. It's specifically Kerala. More than that, it is specifically Tamil Nadu, and it's basically based on these 2 concepts: the outreach and inclusivity, and the teaching, learning and resources. These 2 things they are applying a lot of their basic understanding to, and resources of the state also. So before we move on to the third article, which is again related to the first article, is this basic point clear? This is not a, it's a very different type of article itself. 3 basic things: NIRF ranking, basic parameters, and the concept of 3 or to 4 basic hotspots of education in India. Are these points clear? If they are, then we'll move to the third article, which is totally an opposite of the first one. Yes? Okay. Now, this is the other side of the story. We saw the first side of the coin. Now we're looking at the second side of the coin. The first side was all rosy relationship, good relationship, technology, waiver, exceptionism. Now the second is how India is coming under pressure from the US on certain parameters. So again, I'm going to give you the basic overview here, and then we can go into the nitty-gritty. The basic overview is very straightforward. See, the US as of right now is doing a lot of exceptions, but the US also has a very good, what we call as service-based digital trade, wherein, for example, Amazon, different type of banks and other digital e-service providers. It's a very big producer of that, and a very big, you can call it a consumer and a producer both, because Amazon caters to India also, but Amazon has a very big market in US also. So we'll take Amazon as an example. The simple aspect here is, be it Netflix, be it Amazon, Netflix is an OTT platform, gives you e-service. This is called digital trade. Digital trade means e-services or e-commerce in that regard, electronic services which are provided to Indians from America itself. So Netflix is a very good example of OTT, e-commerce would be Amazon, and thereafter even Apple to some level gives you what is called the Apple Pay services, which is basically a credit card concept which is now coming to India but has a lot of riders on it. Different type of American banks want to enter into the Indian market itself. So there's a lot of e-services which America wants to provide to India, and the biggest e-service provider is what we do every day, which is Google. Google or ABC Corporation. The Google is the biggest corporation which is providing e-services, be it basic map services, be it the advertisement services, e-trade or e-services or electronic services. Digital trade is a very big component of America's economy itself. Now, what happened when Prime Minister Modi went to America was that there was a basic discussion which happened on how digital trade, somehow America has a profit or a what we call as a surplus in all trades with India, but when it comes to digital services, it has a deficit. And that is basically based on certain rules and regulations which are there in India, which the Americans don't like. And there's a lot of pressure which has been created on the Prime Minister and generally India to change this basic regime itself, because a lot of questions were given to, for example, Twitter or Elon Musk itself, that do you like the fact that Twitter has to comply with government agencies in India itself, and he said that it is not above the nation itself, it's not supranational, it has to be bound by national laws itself. But that also he did it with a very big stone on his chest itself. But the aspect of US relationship with India, the problematic aspect is digital trade. So this is the context which I am trying to argue, wherein digital trade, whenever I say digital trade, think of Amazon, Google and Netflix, and you will automatically understand what I mean by that. And what actually is hindering the process of digital trade is basically a set of 3-4 basic regulations in India. The first thing which they don't like is the IT regulations. Under the IT Act, if you have been following the news itself, they need to have a compliance officer here. Within 24 hours, they have to remove certain content if the government of India says. They also have to, within 72 hours, do dispute reversal mechanism, which only creates a more and more form of costs for these different players in India. So the first is the IT Act. We'll go into the details later. We'll talk about the basic points here. First is the IT Act, which they don't like. Second is what is called the equalization levy. See, equalization levy is a tax which is basically inspired by what the Europeans did to Google, which is that if a company is not operating from India and it does not have a permanent office or it does not have any proper establishment in India, and it gives a certain type of e-service to any of the residents of India, it has to then basically what is happening is it is paying taxes only in America, not in India. There's an equalization levy which is 6%, and recently 2% has been added, and there are different riders on when you are under 2%, when you are under 6%. But there's 6% equalization tax which India takes for any non-resident company itself. This is to basically check that they are actually not evading tax. For example, Netflix provides a lot of services in India, but it is not based in India itself. So it is paying taxes to the US government, but it is you tapping into the Indian market itself. So how does India make sure that it complies to Indian taxation? It adds a 6% levy that irrespective, it's a lump sum tax, irrespective of whatever your trade is, 6% will be the taxation on you because you are operating in India. This is called double taxation. Double taxation means that they are getting taxed in America also, they are getting taxed in India also. So the equalization levy is something which they don't like, along with the IT. Thereafter, when we come to data protection, and you know in India there is now, for which even PUBG had to go, basically had to stop operating in India. Data protection is that your servers need to be in India. Geotagging, geospatial tagging is very, very important. You cannot take all the data from India and operate from America. You have to have your cloud-based services or your servers in India itself, which again is problematic for Google and a lot of different players because they have to thereafter create new establishments in India because the basic data protection laws don't allow that data to go. And this is good. Equalization levy is also good. IT is also good. Data protection is also good. It is good for India. I'm not saying that we need to remove it. The simple point is the problem here is that they are creating pressure on removing this. All of this is to safeguard us. We the Indians are safeguarded by these different regulations, and the Americans don't like it. IT regulations, equalization levy, data protection, which is localization of data itself, and last but not the least, the draft telecommunication bill adds OTT, which is over the Netflix, Amazon Prime, these different services, OTT platforms with the telecommunication service providers. Therefore, Airtel, Jio and all OTT platforms are clubbed together itself. So therefore they need to get a license. They are regulated by different telecommunication acts, and these OTT platforms don't like it. So therefore there are 4 basic areas in which they are finding it irritant, or they're getting frustrated. First is the regulatory mechanism within IT Act. Second is the equalization levy. Third is the data protection regime itself. And thereafter, the telecommunication draft bill also gives them or pushes them into the license regime or the basic regulatory mechanism of getting licenses, getting basic regulatory approvals in India itself. And therefore, when it comes to digital trade itself, they are creating pressure for changing this regime. And this was discussed in this trip also. So before I go into the nitty-gritty, which is again quite a lot of detail, I hope you understand the basic point of this relationship, this very important editorial which came with regards to how there are basic problematic aspects in this relationship which also need to be ironed out. First one was an optimistic one. The second one is the problematic one. Yes? Great. So let's go into the nitty-gritty then. So the first most important topic or the subsection which we need to understand is that the US tech companies are feeling suffocated in India, and they are trying to remove the protectionist posture which India has taken, wherein it is trying to protect its economy and its people from the predatory practices of the Americans. Now, wherein lies the problem, wherein the US finds this relationship problematic, is that when it comes to digital overall trading partner, 7.65% increase in bilateral trade has happened in 2022-23. However, when it comes to digital services, there is a major deficit, close to $27 billion deficit towards the US, and therefore US sees that this digital service market is where India needs to change its stance, and the US needs to create pressure on India to change its stance. So let's try to understand what are the different areas which the US tech companies flagged, and this will give you the different aspects of the different relationships. So the first is the US extension of market access is not reciprocated. The US says that we have given you free access to India, we have given you free access to the US, we have been very open when it comes to trade itself, but you are not reciprocating. This is the basic argument which they are making, reciprocation of the relationship of what we call as free trade itself. A very old argument, laissez-faire, this, that. The British used it to exploit India. This is again the basic argument that you open your economy so that we can also get the basic access to this major population of the world itself. This is all a standard argument which is a very colonialistic, imperialistic argument that the market access, trade and openness has not been reciprocated. We don't need to fall in this trap. We have seen this type of argument previously also. Now, the first discriminatory regulatory policy which they argue is the equalization levy. So in 2016, with the goal of equalizing the playing field, this is what the act was. India imposed what is called resident service suppliers and non-resident service suppliers. This is called equalization, to equalize a non-resident which is not in India and a resident supplier, imposed a unilateral measure of a levy of 6% tax on specific services received or receivable by a non-resident not having permanent establishment in India for a resident in India who carries out business. Basically, it's the technical terminology, 6% taxation, unilateral, nothing, no progressive, no regressive, 6% taxation straightforward on a supplier who is non-resident itself. So if you are not operating in India, you are then only giving taxes in the US. You already have an advantage. Maybe you're only paying 1% tax in the US. An Indian corporate has to pay close to 14% or 12%. Then we are trying to equalize it by 6%. This is a major tax which Google gives in India, which is 6% major taxation, which is on the equalization levy on the digital services itself. This is the first irritant which they pointed out, equalization levy. Second, the equalization levy 2.0 imposes 2% tax on gross revenues received by e-commerce operators for the provision of e-commerce supply and services. So therefore 2% on e-commerce, 6% on a supplier generally coming from outside India. This is the first, as I said, equalization levy. Any issue till this point? Equalization levy is the first irritant. Anybody has any issue here? No? Okay. Now, the second irritant for them is the IT Act, the Information Technology Act, under which in 2021 itself, they flagged and we introduced the concept of what we call as intermediaries or grievance redressal officers. So what they argue is that the compliance burden on social media intermediaries is very, very big. The impractical compliance deadlines and takedown protocols are also problematic, wherein 24 hours if you receive it from the government to take it down itself. And a local compliance officer is something which they find problematic. And therefore, the different aspects related to social media institutions and the 72-hour notification when it comes to grievance redressal mechanism is problematic for them. So the second is the IT regulations, wherein three aspects are there. First, 24 hours remove something if the government says, 72 hours grievance redressal mechanism. Third is the aspect related to a local compliance officer, which is very specific to India. You have to have a person in India who can be reached out for grievance redressal. So the first was the aspect related to equalization tax. The second is related to the IT Act. Now, the third is the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which was released in 2022 itself, and it calls for what is called cross-border data flows, compliance timelines, and data localization. This is what they don't like. Data localization is something which they don't like because they have to now bring their servers to India itself. And in that context, with a very big gold mine of data with digital users close to 759 million active internet users, they don't want their processors or even their data hubs to be in India, but they want it to be in America. So therefore, if the company has to operate in India, it has to data localize. The problem is, again, it's a very huge cost to US tech companies to localize the data itself. And therefore, Meta, which is Facebook or Amazon, has been pushing to say that to remove this basic concept of data localization, it is leading to additional costs itself. So the cross-border flow of data is something which India regulates, and again is a very good concept, but they don't like it. And last but not the least is the draft telecommunication bill of 2022. The telecommunication bill, very simply, the TSPs and the OTT, which is Airtel, Jio, and all OTT platforms have been clubbed together. So now that they've clubbed together these two under the telecommunication bill draft regulation, it means that they are now subject to different types of licensing requirements, government access to data, encryption requirements, internet shutdowns, seizure of infrastructure, monetary obligations of the sector, and therefore there is a licensing requirement which comes into picture for OTT platforms which they enjoy across the world. Only in India they have to do this. So very simply, before we move on to the Prelims Bytes section, let me give you an overview of the first three articles, and I'll discuss the first and the third together, and the third one in a different, second one in a different context itself. But till this point, I hope everything made sense to you. These two articles are contrasting to each other, but give you very interesting perspective about the relationship with the US itself. If this is basically clear, I'll give you an overview of whatever we've done till this point, because it gives you a better understanding of whatever we have to understand in the India-US relationship in that sense. So very simply, the first article talked about the American exceptionism. First exception in nuclear, then CATSA, then oil, and thereafter technology. All this based on the fact that India is a vibrant democracy, India is the biggest market itself, China, and India's diasporic population. Now this is the first article which talks about a very positive note, exceptionalism to exceptionism. And the US relationship has been going forward in very good way, strength to strength it has been moving forward. Thereafter, the third article which we discussed gives you a totally contrasting picture in which the US is creating a lot of pressure on India because in their digital players are subject to 5 basic irritants. First is equalization levy, 6% or 2% tax, which is for a non-resident supplier or e-commerce giant. Thereafter, they have a problem with the IT regulations, compliance officer, the problem of the problem of compliance officer for 24-hour removal, 72-hour redressal. Then they have a problem with the way we have certain telecommunication bill which has come through, which argues that they have to go into the same licensing regime itself. They also have a problem with data protection, which is data localization itself, because that creates a lot of different problems for them. So therefore, in both the articles, we have one picture which is a very, very positive one, and the second one wherein there's a lot of irritants, and that is the pressure which India has to now withstand, making sure that we don't give up on that. The second article which we discussed was very simply NIRF and the concentration of certain education institutions in certain states. Till this point, everything revised. Is this clear? Then we'll move to the Prelims Bytes section. Very small, straightforward, basic facts we have to remember there. Yes? Great. Perfect. So, yesterday was quite significant. 5 different Vande Bharat expresses were inaugurated. One from Bhopal to Jabalpur, Bhopal to Indore, Goa and Mumbai, Ranchi, Patna, and Dharwad to Bengaluru. Though the article which has come in the Hindu newspaper a little bit criticizing that though we have now 23 Vande Bharat trains in India, they are not performing as per their speeds, because the high speed network which we were talking about, the highest or the fastest Vande Bharat train of all these 23 is basically the New Delhi Varanasi one, which goes average speed is 96 kilometers per hour, which covers this 759 kilometers in 5 to 6 hours. The simple point is the article is talking about how they are below 80 kilometers per hour, which brings them to Shatabdi or not even Shatabdi, Rajdhani levels. But the simple point is, we don't have to go into the negative aspect. What is more important to us is very simply 23 Vande Bharat express trains are there as of right now in India, and 5 were inaugurated yesterday. We don't have to go into the other aspect that they are not performing well when it comes to speed. That is based on a lot of different indicators, a lot of different concepts with regard to weather, the heat, rain, even the basic clearances. We don't care about that right now. What we care about is the aspect related to which are these lines which have been opened. Simple. Thereafter, GI tags, very important. Recently 7 products from Uttar Pradesh have got the GI tag. And these include, again, I'm giving you the list, just have to remember them. But the point is, by the time the examination comes, maybe these are not relevant to you. But the GI indication registry in Chennai has given 7 different products of Uttar Pradesh GI tags. You have the Amroha Dholak, you have the Mohoba Gora Panthar, the Hasta Kaliship, then you have the Mainpuri Tarkashi, then you have Sambal Horn Craft itself, Bagpat Home Furnishing, the Barabanki handloom product, and the Kalpi handmade paper itself. All of them have got a GI tag. Just add it to your repository. It will generally help you. Maybe in a context of an art and culture discussion later, which I will do on the same platform on YouTube, I'll elaborate on each one of them. As of right now, you just have to remember these 7 have been added from UP itself. All of them having their own interesting relationship with UP and its history itself, but that's a separate discussion altogether. Maybe we'll do it under big news or a specific discussion for GI only. Thereafter, something important when it comes to Aadhaar, because Aadhaar authentication, 2 to 3 different questions have come previously. The simple point is that Aadhaar authentication when it comes to birth and death can now be done through Aadhaar. Simple. The center has allowed the Office of the Registrar General of India to perform Aadhaar authentication during birth and death in the country itself. However, it is not mandatory. It just says that Aadhaar database can be used for authenticating the identity and providing the person death certificate or birth certificate, so that there is a certain ease of doing this basic concept, because there's a lot of documents which are needed. Aadhaar authentication will bring it down itself. Now every state has to comply with that. Last but not the least, but the easiest is again awards. A lot of awards have now been seen in different platforms, and UPS has also been asking about questions related to awards. So on Tuesday, very important medals were given to the military officers in India, wherein distinguished services awards were given, wherein 52 Ati Vishishta Seva medals were given on 84 serving and retired personnel of the Armed Forces, Indian Coast Guard, as said by the Defense Ministry. So you have to just remember the Ati Vishishta Seva medal here. Thereafter, the award was presented at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The most important, Lieutenant General ADS Ujla, the former commander of Srinagar-based Chinar Corps responsible for guarding the LOC in Kashmir, was given the Uttam Yuddha Seva medal itself, and thereafter the 52 Ati Vishishta Seva medals, 1 bar to AVSM, 3 the Uttam Yuddha Seva medal were given to different important personalities. 28 Param Vishishta Seva medals were also given. You don't have to go into the details, just that you have to remember these names now. Ati Vishishta Seva medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva medal, Param Vishishta Seva medal. These are the 3 names which you have to remember. It changes every year, but now you also have to keep it in your basic radar. So before I end this session and go to the mains questions itself, we have discussed 3 very important articles, 4 very small articles. 4 small articles, Vande Bharat trains, 5 have been inaugurated, 23 are there. Second, Aadhaar authentication for registration of death and birth certificate. Thereafter, third, related to the aspect of GI tags, 7 have been given to the UP sector itself. And thereafter, last but not the least, very important Vishishta medals being given to defense personnel recently on Tuesday. The 3 bigger articles talked about the US relationship and NIRF, and you can see these 2 questions will test your knowledge with regards to that. The India-US relationship has moved from American exceptionalism to a more pragmatic era of American exceptionism for India. Do you agree? Very realistic question for GS paper 2. These two words, please remember, American exceptionism and American exceptionalism. Second, discuss the irritants in the digital trade between India and the US. Again, this is a very US centric question. Again, GS paper 2 and 3 you can get this type of question, but I hope you will be able to answer these type of questions generally. Yes, if all of this is clear, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow with another set of 5 to 6, 7, 8 different articles out of the Hindu newspaper. Tomorrow and day after till Friday, it's me only. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.